El alfabeto, the alphabet. Spanish is renowned for its straightforward pronunciation. Apart from a few points we need to look at, each letter stands for a sound, and this connection between letter and sound is strictly and reliably maintained in all contexts. This makes it easier to learn new words, as you don't have to wait for someone to pronounce the word for you in order to learn its right pronunciation. You can apply the alphabet rules and pronounce the word with confidence. Some sounds are particular to Spanish, of course, and you can spend some time familiarizing yourself with them and practicing them. With a bit of practice, they'll seem much easier. I recommend that you look at a few letters at a time rather than trying to take in the whole alphabet in one go. You will assimilate each letter much better if you focus on a few at a time. All in all, I'm sure you'll find the reliability of the alphabet helpful and reassuring. In each slide, you'll be able to see the letter in red with its name in green underneath. The naming is written in a way that will help you pronounce it. It's not the way we write it in Spanish, but this will make it easier for you at this stage. There are also some examples and occasionally an explanation in black at the bottom of the page. So let's start with the vowels. You may be thinking all European languages share the same 5 vowels, and it's just a matter of learning how they are pronounced. But if we think of the actual vocalic sounds that each language has, we will soon discover it is not so straightforward in some cases, like English. In English, we have 5 written vowels, but there are far more vocalic sounds than that. 12, in fact. Think of car, cup, man, sheep, ship, and many others. And they are all represented with the same 5 written vowels. It's no surprise then that pronunciation is one of the hardest elements to get to grips with from a language student perspective. You will be glad to know that Spanish has just 5 written vowels and nothing more. And even better, these vowels are always pronounced the same way in all contexts, in all words. And to make it even easier, the Spanish vowels follow a progression from wide open to very close. So starting with A, this is the vowel we pronounce when we open our mouth wide. For the sake of distinguishing it from the others, we can imagine we are shouting, ah. In second place, we have a slight closing of the lips into a relaxed line. Think of Manuel from Fawlty Towers and his repetitive question, ¿qué? What? E. Next comes E, the smiling letter. Relax your lips into a nice smile and say E. The fourth vowel shapes our lips into a small circle for a short and clipped O. This is the O of surprise maybe or astonishment. Oh no! Finally, our lips can't close any further. This is what we do when we whistle or blow a kiss. It's the final stage of the closing lips. U. As you can see, the Spanish vowels are short and clipped. A, E, I, O, U. Only 5 vowels to learn is not bad, considering how many other languages can have. Because they are only 5, it is important to clearly distinguish them. Spend some time practicing them at the beginning of your journey to speaking Spanish. It will make everything else so much easier. Here we can see the vowels again, with a hint to remember the different closing of the lips. A, shout. E, que, what? I, smile. O, oh no. And U, whistle or kiss. Let's look at some examples of words that may help you remember these. A, Ana. Patata. Mañana. E, Edu, short for Eduardo. Elena. Mercedes. Belén. I, Ian. Isabel. Chiquilín. It's a popular brand of Spanish biscuits. If instead of the L we had a T, chiquitín, it would mean really, really small. But it's with an L, chiquilín. O, Olivia. Coco. U, Uma. Lulu. Now let's look at the complete alphabet, including consonants. A, Ana, amiga, friend, lady friend, or friend who's a girl, amiga. B, bar, is the same as English. C, this is the first letter we need to look at in detail to learn a few particularities of the Spanish language. The letter is called C in the standard variety of European Spanish, which is called Castilian. In Latin America and some parts of Spain, mainly in the south and the Canary Islands, the letter is pronounced C. This letter is actually pronounced the same way in English when in front of A, O, and U. It's what we call a hard C, like a K. Canada, Colombia, Cuba. But when it precedes the two mischievous vowels A and E, it becomes soft, hence the pronunciation C. Barcelona, gracias. And in Latin America, like an S. Barcelona, gracias. So those are the two different pronunciations. Apart from that, the two varieties of Spanish, or the different varieties of Spanish, are quite similar, but this is one of the features where you can see a difference between those two, in particular, well, the whole Latin America and some parts of Spain, and the European Standard Spanish. This is the letter Che, chocolate. It's the same as English, but as I said here, chocolate, remembering the vowels are always the same, the vowels, so we've got O, O, A, E, chocolate. De is the same as English, but the pronunciation of this word is quite different. We need to look at the vowels. If we went to Spain and ordered a donut, if we use the English word, it might not be that obvious because it's such a different pronunciation of those vowels. But in Spanish, being consistent as it is, we know these are the vowels that one is the O, where the lips are not wide open, they're already closing, shaped into a circle like the letter itself. O, and then we've got the last closing stage of the lips where we are whistling or kissing, so that's U, and the word will be donut, quite different to donut. E, Elena. F, same pronunciation as English, fiesta. G. The letter G behaves similarly to the letter C in that it has a soft and a hard variation depending on which vowels are following. And the vowels that make the difference again are always the same, E and E. But first, let's look at A, O, and U. This is the hard G, which is the same as in English. Gazpacho, gol, me gusta. But when we have E and E, the G changes to a guttural sound, one of the most distinguishable Spanish sounds probably. G, which is the name of the letter. This is similar to the CH in Scottish words like loch. In Spain, the pronunciation can be quite throaty, gel, but it doesn't have to be. In Latin America, it is softer, like the English H. And this is absolutely fine. Gel, or hell, it's really like an H. Hell, Gibraltar, Ginebra. Gin, Ginebra. Something else we need to know about this letter is the combination GUE and GUI. These two unique combinations with the U in between exist only so that we can obtain the hard G sound with E and E. In the previous slide, we have seen that if G precedes these two vowels, it's pronounced G. So how can we get the hard G sound with these two vowels? Well, the language has this device of having the GUE and the GUI. With the first example, it might not be that obvious because the word has been adapted to the English pronunciation to a point where it doesn't bear much connection to its original pronunciation. But if we apply the alphabet rules in Spanish, we will see that the word is pronounced guerrilla. G-U-E, guerrilla. And the second example is instantly recognizable to help you remember that the combination GUE or GUI has the U in between, which is not pronounced, and the G is a hard G. So, guitarra. H is not very interesting, as it's completely silent, both at the beginning, hola, and anywhere else within a word, alcohol. You might be thinking, why bother keeping it? And indeed, other Latin languages have precisely eliminated it from the alphabet, like Italian. But Spanish wanted to keep it for etymological reasons, to make it easier for us to know the origin of words, which come from Latin, which come from Greek, which ones are related, etc. One thing to note here is that H is silent as a letter on its own. When we have che, as in chocolate, that is a different letter altogether. It's the C plus the H together forming one word and one sound. So that's something different here. When the H is on its own, it's a letter and it's silent always. I, igloo. Here we can see with the English word as well the pronunciation, the right pronunciation of the letter I in Spanish. Igloo. J. J, we have again the characteristic Spanish sound of the guttural J. In this case, the letter is called J and it's always pronounced like this. We can see it in the word jamón, which will make us think instantly of ham. Jamón, ham. K is not really a Spanish letter. We mainly have it to accommodate words from other languages like kefir or the measurements kilo, kilogramo, kilómetro. Another difference, first of all, we've got L, Leo, the same as in English, but now we've got ella. And it's another difference with English. Double L in Spanish represents a different phoneme, a different sound. It's the same sound we make when we pronounce the letter Y as a consonant in English. The example we can see here is interesting because I have often heard it pronounced as polo. But the word polo also exists, and it's also something we eat. So this could potentially lead to some interesting situations. Polo is a nice lolly. So next time you're in Spain, make sure you order the right kind of polo or pollo, depending on the situation. M is the same as English, Madrid, for example, and N as well. Naranja. Just notice here that we've got the J, ja, or ha, a bit softer. So that's the only thing to look at in this word from your perspective. So we need to pronounce that her sound. Naranja. Ñ is also a very characteristic letter in the Spanish alphabet. It's the N with a wriggly hat, as it's commonly referred to as well. But again, this is a clearly distinct letter with a clearly distinct sound. And it's important also to practice it because sometimes you will find words where the same word can mean something different whether you have an N or an ñ. So that those two as well will create two different words. So it's important also to practice and become confident with the pronunciation of this ñ. And it's quite easy, actually. I think it's a little bit like having an N and an E together, like in the word canyon, the Great Canyon. If you try and put that N and that E together a little bit fast, a little bit closer together, you might get this sound ñ. Canyon, canyon, cañón in Spanish. So that's the ñ español. O, olivas. P, patatas. Q. You will not find many words containing Q because it only appears in the two combinations that you can see at the top left corner, que and ki. This might remind you of something we've already seen in another slide with the letter G. Similarly to what happened with GUE and GUI, remember the words guitarra and guerrilla, this combination helps us achieve the hard C sound with the mischievous vowels A and E. Remember that if you have the letter C in front of these two vowels, A and E, the resulting sound is a soft C. So the city Barcelona and thank you, gracias. Sometimes you will find words that are written with a K in their original language, but they have been adapted to follow the Spanish spelling conventions, like kiosco. Like in the case of the GUE and GUI, the U is not pronounced. So that's que, what, and kiosco. R is also quite different. When we only have one R in the middle or end of a word, the letter is produced with a single tap of the tip of the tongue against the front palate, just behind the upper front teeth. It's a single tapping movement. I think the best way to illustrate this is to think of the way the letter D or T in the middle of a word is pronounced in the United States. So think of those two words at the bottom. In England, we would say daddy, water, but in America, we'll often hear daddy, water. And that sound is very similar, if not the same actually, than the Spanish R. So try and practice that. Hopefully this will help you pronounce this single R in the middle of a word or at the end. But if the R is at the beginning of the word, we actually roll it. And it becomes then a succession of taps of the tip of the tongue against the front palate, as if we were drilling a hole in our wall. Grrr, that sort of rolling. Ronda, the place in Spain, ronda. This also happens when you've got a double R in the middle of the word. So that's a bit more straightforward because you can see that it's double. That's like warning you, well, here you've got two R's, so this is rolled. You need to roll it. But if it's at the beginning of the word as well, because it would be very difficult anyway to pronounce a single R with a single tap at the beginning of the word. That's rolled. And here you can see again comparison. We've got another example, another situation in which you've got two different words, only distinguishable by one letter. If you have one R, you're saying pero. But if you've got two, you are saying a different word, perro, because those two letters, or phonemes actually, sounds, they represent two different sounds in the language, and it's important to distinguish them. Ese is the same as in English, sangria. There isn't really very different. The only difference here maybe is, well, the fact that we don't have this aspiration that English has, which means that sort of bit of air after we pronounce the T. In English is t, t, t. We're kind of making quite hard. In Spanish it's a bit softer. Teléfono. It just flows nicely. There's no aspiration. Teléfono. Uno, like the game. V in Spanish, well, in Spanish from Spain, this letter has a different name in Spain and in Latin America. So in Spain, it's called V, and you can see in the pronunciation that actually it's pronounced like a B. There is no difference whatsoever between those, B and V. The example, vale. That means okay. We use it all the time in Spain, the same way we use okay in English, vale. And that's like a B. So if you hear the word and you don't know how it's written, you wouldn't know because B and V are exactly the same. But if you see the word for the first time written down and you're wondering how to pronounce it, you should be able to, because you know that B and V are the same. They are pronounced the same. So here in this case, well, it's a B always. So in this case, you look at vale and you know this is going to be vale. No doubt about it. By the way, actually, now that I mentioned this E at the end of the word is always pronounced as well. That is one of the things that I notice at the beginning when you're learning with my students, when they're learning Spanish. It's very tempting, especially if you've learned French before, sometimes to think that maybe the final E in a word or an E at the end of a word will not be pronounced, but it is. In Spanish, all the vowels are pronounced everywhere, and they are pronounced the same way. Always, nothing makes them change. We don't have nasal ends like in French. So for example, the preposition en, which means in, it's the same in French. And I know some students are tempted to say on because of the nasal end. But in Spanish, we don't have nasal sounds at all, and nothing makes the vowel change. So if it's at the end of the word like here, vale, or before an N, en, or also in the word garden, which I should have put it here as well. That's another typical one. Jardín, garden, jardín. Nothing makes the vowel change, so they're always reliable. Once you get to know the 5 of them, that's why I think it's important at the beginning to have do a little work so that you get used to them, confident with them, and it will become everything will become so much easier, second nature. And again, well, the difference with Latin America is that in Latin America, it is actually pronounced like in English. So that's ve, that is vale. W also has different names for Latin America and Spanish. We've got V doble, which is actually double V in Spain, but W, it's a different order, and also maybe they also say V doble, but W more often than not. And then the words normally will come from other languages, and it's pronounced like the English W, so here will be the same. But before I pronounce it, just notice that the vowels again are going to be Spanish. They are going to be kept logical because we want to be always logical and follow the pattern. hence the reminder of the closing lips, because that's the U, the final stage of the closing lips. It's going to be U, windsurf. X has the same pronunciation as English, but there is a little difference. So X is a combination of K and Z in the case of English, exam, but in Spanish is K and S, because in Spanish we don't have the sound Z. That doesn't exist. So we've got examen. This one is very nice. It's got a nice name. It's called Greek. It's called Greek eye. Y griega. Griega means Greek. And it's in the second place. So we've got first the E and then the griega, Y. And it's pronounced like in English most of the time. Well, always. The thing is that it can be consonant or a vowel. When it's a consonant at the beginning of the word or before a vowel, it's pronounced like yes, like the Y in English. Yogur, yogurt, yogur. But if it's acting as a vowel, at the end of a word, we've got muy. It's an I. Or even on its own, actually, in Spanish, that's a word. It means and. I. That's the vocalic Y. And we come to the last one, which also has a different pronunciation in Spain and Latin America. Because in Latin America, they pronounce it like an S, zeta, but in Spain, we call it theta, and that's a TH in theater. This is always pronounced like this in the standard Spanish from Europe. Theta. And for example, this word, I know that instinctively when you see it, you will be so tempted to say zoo. But think about what we've learned. We've got the vowels that are always pronounced the same way, and this is the one where we close our lips in the shape of the O itself, circle. So that's O. We've got it twice. It's O, a little bit. And the first letter is the Z, which in Spanish is theta. So it's going to be tho. And in Latin America, so. The reason why I've put those letters at the top left corner, it's because normally you'll see it with words, with a vowel, sorry, a or u, because we already have the C in front of E and I to get this sound. You know, Barcelona, gracias, to use the same examples. Normally for that sound, C, you have the C, the letter C. So for a or u, we have the Z, theta, tha, tho, thu. But you will see words that come from other languages where we've kept the Z, perhaps because it would be very strange to change it into a C. So we've got Nueva Zelanda and zigzag. And in Latin America, you would have Nueva Zelanda, zigzag. Now I've got a little activity just to help you practice what you've learned and see if I can make you think about these different features of the Spanish alphabet. Because Spanish pronunciation is so consistent, borrowed words from other languages, international brand names, companies, or even dishes are pronounced following this logical pattern. Having gone through the Spanish alphabet, have a look at the following well-known brands and think about how they would be pronounced in Spain. So I'll give you a few seconds, or maybe you can stop the recording, the video, and think about it before you hear me say it. So I'll just count for a few seconds. That's Colgate. That's Fairy. That's Danone. That's Seat. That's Levi's. That's IKEA. That's ketchup. And that's curry. If you cannot remember how a particular letter is pronounced, especially vowels, think of a word or remember a word in the English language that actually comes from Spanish or has been borrowed from Spanish directly, like siesta. You can see the vowels. Sometimes you look at the word and you're not sure. You think, oh, maybe it's very long, it's got a lot of vowels, and you're not sure. Look at the vowels first of all, I would recommend, and see what they are. So in this case, I would do the vocalic sequence first, I, and then it will come. It will be easier to say the whole thing. Siesta, burrito, piña colada. And finally, just some resources. Video L is a very useful website that contains a list of video clips on different topics. Each clip comes with a full printable transcript and guide with exercises, as well as interactive listening activities. The clips are divided according to level, starting with A1 or beginner level. One of the first ones you can find is this, Pronunciación Marcas, brands. Here you will be able to see how we adapt the words to the Spanish pronunciation pattern, with the exception of a few. And that's all. I hope it was useful, and practice a lot, have a look at this and go a few letters at a time. Keep going back to this and the pronunciation will be so much easier, which will also help you with listening. It will be so much easier to understand and then also to be understood, which helps, everything helps each other with your communication skills. Muchas gracias.